Hi everyone, welcome to CoderCookies. Today we're going to be learning about the Looks tab in Scratch. So what do we use Looks for? These blocks can let us change the appearance of our sprite, and we can customize how we want our sprite to look on screen. So with these blocks we can create some pretty cool animations. So let's start diving into some of the blocks. So the first block is the Say Hello block. Now there's two different Say Hello blocks here. You can notice that one says Say Hello for 2 seconds and the other one just says Say Hello. Now obviously here you can change whatever word you want it to be. I can say, instead of hello, I can say bye, and when I click this it's going to say whatever word I put in, and it's going to say it for however long I choose here. So right now it's 2 seconds, but I can change this to 5 seconds. So when I click this, it will say the word bye for 5 seconds. And all this is really going to do is that it's just going to create a little text bubble coming from our sprite, and it's going to display this word, and again, only for 5 seconds. So let's try it. Yep, so the sprite has said bye, and when 5 seconds are up, the bye goes away. The other one does the same thing, except it doesn't have any time limit. So if I say bye this time, it's just going to say bye, but it's never going to go away. It's just going to say bye, and it'll keep saying bye, and the computer will just look, what's the next block? What's the next thing that we have to do after this? So let's try it. We say bye, and it's just going to stay there forever. It's going to stay there, stay there, stay there. It still hasn't gone away. So that's what the say blocks do. One has a time limit and the other one doesn't. Similarly with the next two is think. So the only difference with think is that the bubble style kind of changes. So instead of a little text bubble, it'll look like the sprite is thinking. So the bubble style kind of changed, as you can see. So it looks like the cat sprite's thinking instead of saying something now. But it does the same thing. Like for say, we could change how long we wanted to say for. Like if we try 5 seconds, after 5 seconds it'll go away, as we can see. Or we can make it think forever. And again, we can change it. We don't have to think whatever words in here. We can change the word. We can say, let's think about pizza. So if I do this, then our sprite's going to start thinking about pizza. You know, whatever word we wanted to put in there. The next couple blocks are pretty important when we're going to start making some animations in our projects. So teachers, if we could please have a show tell. So the next block is called Switch Costume. Now in Scratch, our sprites can have different costumes, which are pretty much like different appearances. So as you can see, if you go to the tab beside Code, there's a tab called Costumes. And you'll see that your regular cat sprite, when you open Scratch, has two different costumes already set up for you. So it has the main one that we're already used to seeing, the cat just standing, and then it always comes with a second one that looks like the cat is running. So using the blocks, we can make the cat go from this image to this image. And I'll show you how to do that. So as you can see, this one is called Costume 1, and this one is called Costume 2. So using the Switch Costume block, I can say, go switch from Costume 1 to Costume 2. So when I click this block, it'll change the costume from whatever costume it is to Costume 2. So let's try it. Click it, and it went to that second costume we have of the cat running. And we can have many different costumes. It doesn't just have to be these two. You can have a different image, does not have to be the cat, and it can have different costumes and things like that. So that's what Switch Costume does. Now there's another one called Next Costume. Now you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? It's pretty much the same thing as Switch Costume, right? Well, there is a little bit of a difference. Let's say you had many different costumes, not just 2. Let's say you had 10 or maybe even 50. Let's say you had a lot of different costumes and you wanted to switch, keep going to the next one instead of saying switch to costume 1, then switch to costume 2, and if I had more, I had to go switch to costume 3, then switch to costume 4 if I wanted to go through every single costume possible. So instead of doing all those blocks, I can simply use the next costume block, just one block, to go through all the different costumes I would have. And how would I do this? So I would use the next costume, and if I click this, it would keep going to the next costume. But if I wanted the program to do it on its own, I can put this block in a loop. So I can grab a loop that makes this go forever. And now when I click this block, this means that it's going to keep going to the next costume. Now you might think, wait, there's only 2 costumes, so what is it going to do after it goes to the second one? So after it's done going through all the costumes, it'll go back to the beginning. So it'll go 1, costume 2, costume, oh, there's no more, so it'll go back to costume 1. So by me putting it in a loop, it'll just keep switching from costume 1 to costume 2 without me having to tell it to switch to which costume. So it'll keep going to the next one. So let's see. So as you can see, it keeps switching from the costume where the cat was standing to where the cat's kind of running. So it keeps switching from this one, then this one, and then back to the one before. So when we keep switching it really quickly, it makes it look like the cat is running. So that's what those 2 blocks do, and those are for costumes. So what are the next ones? The next ones talk about switching and changing the backdrop. Now the backdrop is the background behind your sprite, and we can change the backdrop by going down here, and we have a huge selection of different backdrops that we can choose from in Scratch. So let's say I wanted to choose this Arctic one. I chose the Arctic, and as you can see, just like the costumes, we have 2 different costumes here. Sorry, 2 different backdrops. So the first backdrop was just the blank screen, and the second backdrop that I just added was this Arctic background. So similarly, just like with the costumes, I can switch between different backdrops or different backgrounds, right? So if I say switch backdrop to backdrop Arctic, it'll switch the backdrop from whatever backdrop it is, and is just trying to go to this keyword. So if I look at the keyword, this backdrop is called Arctic. So that's what it's going to change to. So if I say, if I was on the first backdrop, I can switch to the Arctic backdrop by using the switch backdrop block. As you see, I clicked it and it switched to the Arctic. I can go back to the blank screen if I switch it to backdrop 1, which is what the blank screen one was called, the white screen, and it goes back to this blank white screen that we're used to seeing when we open Scratch. Just like the next costume block we can also do next backdrop, so we can keep switching to the next backdrop in line, and it'll keep going to the first one, then the second one, and then the third one. I can show you a demonstration. So let's say we had more than just 2 backdrops. Let's add a couple. So we'll add this one. This one is called basketball. We can add another one. Let's add chalkboard. And let's add another one. Let's add castle. Oops. Let's add chalkboard. So now we have a couple different ones. We have the blank screen, we have Arctic, we have basketball. So many different backdrops here. Now using the next backdrop block, we can easily switch through these backdrops with just this block here. Like I said, if I keep clicking this, it'll keep going to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But how would I make it do it on its own? I can use a loop, like we did before with the costume, right? so I can go into forever, and I'll keep changing the backdrops really quickly. So that's pretty fast. So I can add a time in between here and say switch the backdrop every 3 seconds. So now it will wait 3 seconds before changing it to the next backdrop. Let me try this again. 1, 2, 3, yep, and it changed the backdrop. So that's what those blocks do. So with the costume, switch costume, next costume, and switch backdrop and next backdrop, you can change how your sprite looks, and you can change what the background looks like. The next couple blocks change the attributes or the appearance of our sprite directly. So changing its size and changing its color, or really changing the way our sprite looks. So first, let's bring this back to normal. Let's go back to our blank screen and let's change our cat back to normal. Yep, so here is a regular screen that we're used to seeing. And the next block is called change size. So what this does is it changes the size of our sprite by adding some numbers. So what it adds on to is this number right here. So as you can see down here, it says size 100. Now this is the default standard size of our sprite when we open Scratch. So this right here is size 100. And all this block will do is add on to this size. So the bigger this number gets, the bigger our sprite gets. So if we do change size by 10, it's going to do 10 plus whatever number's in here. It doesn't have to be 100, it could have been 50, 75, but right now it's 100. So this is going to add 10 to 100. 100 is the current size of our sprite. So let's try it. If I add change size by 10 once, it goes to 110. If I do it again, it's going to add 10 again, so 120. So let's say I did 100. Now this number is going to get really big. So it's going to go to 220. So that's how you change the size. But how would I make it smaller? So if positive numbers make it bigger, if it adds on to this number, to bring it back down, I would have to make it a negative number. Subtract from the big size number that we have here. So let's bring it back to its normal size. Let's say we want to bring it back to 100. So we do 220 minus 120. So changing the size by negative 120 will bring it back to 100. So that's what the change size block does. It changes the number of our current size by whatever number you put in here. The difference for this one is that in this one, you're just simply setting the size to whatever number you put in here. It doesn't account for what size it's currently on. It just sets it to whatever number you put. So if I set it to 200%, this is not going to add on to 100, it's just going to set it to 200. So when I click 200, it's going to set it to 200. If I put 50, it's not going to add 50, or it's not going to subtract 50, it's just going to set the size of the sprite to 50% of its original size. And you guys know that the original size of our sprite was 100, so it's going to be half. And that's 50%. And as you can see, it changed down here too, 50. But in this one, you can't really do negative numbers. You can't say set the size to a negative 100, because the smallest size you can get to is 5 actually. If I do negative 200, it'll still say at 5. So for this one, you're pretty much just using positive numbers to set the size at whatever number you want it at. So let's set it back to normal at 100. And that's the regular size we're used to seeing. So that's for size. The next couple blocks we'll talk about changing some effects directly on our sprite. And these can be pretty important when we do things like animations in future projects, and students can be really creative with them, and they can choose to do whatever they want. So teachers, if we could please have a show tell to describe more on these effects. So the next few blocks we're going to talk about are changing and setting color effects to our sprite. And what we can do with this is not directly select a color, but we can change this sprite's color by adding some numbers to it. So in this case, when we're using the cat sprite, its original color is orange. So right now it has no color effect added onto it, it just has its original color. So if I were to set the color effect of this cat sprite to 0, we would get this original color. But now let's say I want to add some colors to this color to this, I want to change the color of our cat, let's make it some different colors. So just like similar to size, we have to add on to this number. Right now it's 0, and 0 is just the original color of whatever sprite you have. So in this case it's orange. So how would I change the color? I'd have to add on to this number. So 0 plus 25 gives us this greenish color, kind of color. It won't always be green because this is just, for this sprite, it's just whatever 0 was plus 25. So in this case, it's greenish. Let's keep adding on to it. If I add 25 more, it's a bit of a darker green. Let's say I add 50 to this. So 50, so 25 plus 25 plus 50 is 100. So in this case, adding 100 to the original color of the orange cat sprite was blue. So that's changing the color. And like we did with setting and changing the size, we can also just set the color. So we saw that adding 25 again, and then adding 50, which is 100, gave us the color blue. So I can do that by just setting the color. So let's say I just set the color back to orange, like our original color of this sprite. So that's orange. So if whenever you set the color to 0, the effect is to 0, that's just going to give you back the original color. Now I remember that for this sprite specifically, when I added 25, 25, and 50, that's 100. So when I added 100, I got blue. So now in this case, when I set it to 100, it's going to give us blue. Now 100 won't give us blue for every single sprite. Remember, that's just 100 points from the orange color that we had. If we had a different color, let's say we had an apple, if I set the apple to 100, we wouldn't get that same color. And show you here. So if I were to set the color of the apple to 100, it wouldn't be dark blue, it'd be a little lighter blue because we started from a different color. In this case, we started from red instead of starting from orange. So that's how you can play around with the color effects to get some different colors. Color is like a number in Scratch, and you don't have to memorize these numbers, you just kind of have to play around with the numbers and get to whatever color you want. You know, do some trial and error in your projects when you're trying to get that color you want. So other than changing the color, there are some other cool effects that we can apply to our sprite to make some pretty cool animations. So if you go to the color word right here, there's a small arrow, and if you click on this, it'll give you a drop-down menu of other effects that we can use in Scratch. So there's color, there's fisheye, there's whirl, pixelate, there's a lot of different kind of effects that we can use. So I'll show you a couple here. First, let's try getting our sprite back to the regular orange color that we used to see. So that's 0. Let's set the color back to 0, make it all to normal. Now, let's try changing the whirl effect of our sprite. So if I change the whirl, it's going to add some cool, kind of funky, kind of circular motion to our sprite. If I keep clicking on it, it's going to add more circles, kind of making it look like a little tornado. And where we can use these effects to make animations if we add some motion to this. So let's add some motion, move 10 steps, let's maybe turn a little bit, and let's bounce off the edge. If on edge, bounce, and let's set a rotation style. And I'll add an event to make this happen when I click the green flag. When I click the green flag, it's going to move around, but also keep adding to this effect. Let's set the effect back to 0. So you can really see the change. So I have to go to whirl and set it to 0 to make our cat go back to normal. Yep. So now when I click this, it's going to have some motion, but it's also going to change the effect. It's going to change how our sprite looks. Ah, see, this only happened once. I need to add a loop to make this happen forever. So let's try again. So as you can see, it has some motion, but it's also adding this crazy whirl effect to it. So it's adding more circles, more circles. So it looks pretty cool. So you can use these effects to make some cool animations, and you can play around with it and have some fun. So other than whirl, there's also, for example, pixelate. And let's see. When I click pixelate, it adds some it makes the sprite turn to a bunch of pixels, and then it went away kind of. Let me show that to you again, maybe a bit slower this time. So if I want to make everything go back to normal, I can use this block called clear graphic effects. And what that does is that it takes away this pixelate effect, makes your sprite kind of go back to normal. So when I clear the graphic effects, hold on, let me stop this. Let's try this again. So this time instead of going by 25, I changed the pixel effect by only going by 4, so it goes gradually, it doesn't go as fast. And now if I clear the graphic effects, it should kind of take away this pixely kind of look. So when I click this, the cat sprite went back to normal for a second, but wait, it went back to doing this. Let's see what happens if I put it inside this. Or here, how about we do this? If the flag is clicked, then it'll do this, but if I click the space bar, it'll clear the graphic effects. So let's stop this, start. It'll start doing these effects, and then when I click the space bar, it'll go back to normal. It'll go back to its original look. Every time I click space, the pixel effect will go away completely. It'll go away for a second, but as soon as I stop, it's gonna keep going back to doing this loop because I clicked the green flag. So the next thing, I can show you another effect here. Let's stop this. Another one is called ghost. So what ghost will do is that it'll make your sprite kind of disappear. So you can play around with these other effects on your own time. They're just pretty cool things that you can play around with, add to your animations, and have some good laughs. So as you can see there, with Ghost, your sprite kind of disappeared. So I can't see it anymore. It's gone. So let me bring it back. I can either stop this to stop this completely, or I could have used the clear graphic effects button to make it come back. So let's try this. It went away with the ghost, and if I clear graphic effects, it's going to come back, but then it went back to showing this thing. If I did this, every time I click this, it's doing the ghost effect. Let's add this a bigger ghost effect. Nah, that's too much. Let's try a smaller number. So every time I click this, it's adding the ghost effect onto here. So it's getting more and more kind of disappearing. Add a bit more to this. But when I clear graphic effects, it's going to go back to normal. So that's what these effects can do. You can change the color, you can change you can make it disappear, you can add some pixels, you can add some cool whirl things. So just little cool animations that you can do to your sprite. So those are those blocks. So the next blocks are pretty simple. They are just one word, so show and hide. So what show is gonna do, say that your sprite maybe is missing in some of your effects, or is kind of behind the background or something like that. It's just not visible on the screen, but you know it's there. So we can use show to bring it back, and hide will do exactly that. It'll make your sprite go away. Not go away, but kind of hide from the user. So the computer knows where it is, but to us it'll look like it's not on screen anymore. So if I click hide, oh, it's gonna go away. It's still in this area, but we just can't see it. So if I click show, I can bring it back. And that's simply what those blocks do. Show the sprite or hide the sprite. Hide, show, hide, show. If I bring it over here, then I make it hide over here. When I click show, it's gonna come exactly back here because that's where its location is. It's just that we can't see it. Yep, and there we go. Show brings it visible, makes it visible, and hide makes it invisible pretty much. So the next two blocks have to do with layers in Scratch. And what layers are is, say I have more than one sprite. So let's add a couple sprites here. Say I had a balloon. It can be anything. I'm just trying to show what we can do with different layers. So let's say we have all these different kind of sprites. And if I drag this bowl over here, right now it's going to show it to be on top of the cat sprite. That's just because we added the bowl after and the cat sprite was already there before. But what if we wanted the bowl to be behind the cat sprite? Or if we wanted the cat sprite to be in front of this bowl? How would we do that? So what we can do is we can use the layer blocks. So I can say, when selected on this bowl, I can say go back one layer. So it will go behind the sprite, that cat sprite. So when I click this, it'll go behind that layer. It'll go behind that sprite. Another way I can do this, let's say I wanted to bring something forward. So I can, if I want the cat to be in front of the bowl, I can go select the cat and say go forward one layer to bring it, get in front of that bowl. Now let's say we had different things stacked up on top of each other. So we had the arrow, sorry, we had the cat, and we had the balloon, then we had the bowl, and then we had the arrow. How can we make the cat come in front of all of these things? So I can use the go to front layer block while selected on the cat to make it come in front of everything, to make it go in front of all those other sprites that are in front of it. So when I click this, when I say go to front, it came in front of all those other sprites. It went through the balloon, it went through the bowl, and went through the arrow. So it came to the front. I can make it go backward. I can say go to the backmost layer, so the very back behind all the other sprites, and it'll go back to where we started at. With this one, you can change the number of layers you want to go through. So let's say I wanted to come not all the way to the front, but in front of the balloon, in front of the bowl, but right behind the arrow. So let's say instead of going all the way to the front or just one layer, let's try 2 layers. So right there, it's behind the arrow, but it's still in front of the bowl and behind the balloon. And that's how you can play with layers to organize where your sprite's kind of located. Kind of like 3-dimensional way of designing your animations. And now what the next things are, these are just different different variables that you can use on screen that tell you what costume number you're on, what backdrop number you're on, and what the size of the sprite is. Let's say I was full screen. I wouldn't be able to see this number down here. So by selecting this size variable, I can always see on screen what the size of my sprite is. So if I say change this to -50, I can see on screen that it's going to be 50. If I was full screen, I wouldn't be able to see this number, so that's why this variable is helpful, because it lets me know what the size of the sprite is. Let's add 50 back to it to set it back to normal. as it can do the same thing with the backdrop number. Let's say again I was full screen, or I just didn't know what the backdrop number was. I can use this variable to help me figure out what backdrop number I'm on. So I can switch to the basketball backdrop because that's what it's called, but this is letting me know that that's the third backdrop that we have. Similarly with the costumes, if I switch to costume 2 and I click on it, this will tell me that this is my second costume. So these just let us know real time what number we're on. So we're on the second costume number, this is our third backdrop, and this is the size of the sprite. Because sometimes, you know, when we're full screen, we don't know this information. So this can just be helpful sometimes when you're trying to see, if you just want to know that information when it's full screen, or if you can't see this information over here, those variables will let you know what value you're on. So that's pretty much everything in looks. Now you can go experiment with all the blocks and create some cool animations.